Hello, this is episode 10 of the Tiny Barn Build series. And in this video, I'm going to be building a clay brick wall to hide this very unsightly concrete retaining wall. Now I'm hoping you watched the previous video where I poured this concrete wall and watched the formwork give way to the point I've got a very unsightly bulge in it. Now this clay brick skin is going to hide all of that and make it straight and true. But before I get into that, I've first of all got to fill in this trench. Now these are the surfaces that were installed in the last video, and the joins are on this side of the wall, so we've got a chance to actually repair them in the future if need be. They've had about a week to confirm that they're not actually leaking, so I can go ahead and fill in this trench, and then I've got a nice work surface here to stand whilst I'm building this brick skin. Now, we'll be coming back to landscape this area properly once I've got the tiny barn finished, but for now I just need a flat, safe working space. And so this is perfect. Okay, well this is the last of the bricks that I've got here, all cleaned up and stacked over here, ready to use. Now I've estimated I need 572 bricks for this skin over this retaining wall, and right here I've got 572 bricks. Let's see if my estimate was anywhere close. And perhaps you can see best from this angle that this is the area of the wall that's got the worst of the bulge, that's the furthest out of plumb. Now from memory, I think it's around 40 millimeters out, but I don't want to rely on memory. So instead, I'm going to screw a batten of wood to either end of this wall, pull a string line between the two so I know it's dead straight, check to make sure that's parallel with the tiny barn floor structure, and then using my level, plumb down to the foundation and determine exactly where the front of that wall needs to be. Using the level will allow me to measure back to the wall and determine if there's enough space for a brick, so I can figure out on the foundation exactly where I need to be building. Now I just want to get a mark down on the foundation here just as a guide. When I lay that first course, I know I'm the correct distance away from the retaining wall. Okay, well I've just loosely laid out the brickwork for the first course just so I can check my bonding and decide whether there's going to be any cuts and where they're going to be. And it's almost as though I designed it this way. There are no cuts. It's a straight run of full brick, which is brilliant. Now, I have got one issue, and that is when I poured the footing for this part of the wall here, the large part underneath the fireplace, I had spare concrete, so I put it in that hole. And what that has effectively done is raised, or thickened the foundation. It has raised the foundation so the step height no longer works in terms of brick courses. And what that means is, if I just go ahead and lay the first course of brick down in that trench, by the time I get up to this step you see over here, my brick's going to be 30 millimeters too high. And that means I've got a cut or a spacer to put all the way around the corner, and I don't want to do that. So instead, I'm going to put some splits down in the bottom of this trench to bring it up to that extra 30 millimeters in height, and then I can run my normal courses. And the great news is that when I built the decorative curved retaining wall, I have lots of these offcuts, and these are the perfect thickness for my first course of brick. And this will bring me up to that height so that by the time I get to ground level here, the courses will be running level. And I've made one more decision as well to make a small modification here. The corners of this column, and indeed the corners of this wall over here, I don't want them to be a sharp corner. I want them to have a little bit of detail in there. So I'm going to take a brick and just cut a radius just on the end, so I end up with a radius down here and here, and one on the end there. Now that means I need to go ahead and cut these now, so that I've got them ready when I get the first mix on. Now it turns out I need just over 40 bricks with the corners cut off and rounded over, so I've found something the right radius, something that's going to look quite good, and I'm just going to mark all of these ones out right now, get them cut, and then when I start mixing I can just keep building. Now you'll notice I'm using a hand grinder for these and not a wet saw, and that's by choice. Now I do want to give a big shout out to my good friend and neighbour Yvonne, who has lent me a brick wet saw, and I will be using that when I get onto the much more decorative brickwork of the chimney breast fireplace. However, for this job, because they're curves, it just seems more practical to go ahead and use a simple hand tool. And of course that's very much the theme of this project. It's a simple wall. Simple brick bonding using simple tools. Wow, it really does work well. Now I'm going to continue to give you an update on just how well the Basecamp mask works in terms of long-term use. Now I can tell you that the longest I've worn it in one stint is about 7 hours, and it did a sterling job. That was in a metal shop, cutting, grinding, welding, and it kept me really clear in terms of my breathing throughout the entire day, and it was pretty comfortable by the end of the day as well. I'm not going to say I couldn't tell I was wearing it, but it was pretty comfortable. Here, about an hour and 45 minutes of cutting. I can breathe really clearly. This has captured all that nasty dust. Feels good. Feels good to look after your lungs. Now, the good people at Basecamp have extended their 10% discount, so please make sure if you want to go ahead and buy one of these, use the link in the description below. Make sure to put in the code to get your 10% discount. Now it's really difficult for you to see clearly what I'm doing down inside this trench. So I'm going to just smash out these 5 courses. I say smash out, it's probably going to take me most of the day, to be honest. Remember, I'm not a brickie, I'm a novice. I'm going to get these up to this line here, which is in line with that course that runs straight through to the corner. Then we'll check in and I'll explain my thought process on how I get these lines straight. Well, now I've built up the trench and got the wall up to the foundation height, I can do a little bit of backfilling just to give me somewhere to stand, and then plan out the first course that's going to run straight through to the corner of the wall. So what I'm going to do is put the first corner brick in place. Now this has got a curved edge to it, so I can't use a conventional block to support the line. But nevertheless, I'm going to put the first corner in place and then work down over by this chimney breast and put the first couple of bricks in there, pull a string line between the two, and then I can ensure that both sides of this column are going to be perfectly straight and aligned with each other. Now, if you're a particularly slow bricklayer, like me, you do need to pay attention to the mortar going off and make sure that you joint up in time. I'm using a jointing bar to compress the mortar into the joint, giving it a more durable, weather-tight finish. But if I'm honest, I'm doing this a little bit too soon. The mortar's still just a little bit wet. But I'm not concerned, because this isn't the finish that I'm going to go for. It's a bit too modern for me. I'm going to be raking out these joints once the mortar has nearly gone off. You'll see that later in the video. Well, now I've got that course in place, it's going to be partially above ground, running all the way from the fireplace out to here. I can begin cornering up with the brickwork, pyramid style, maybe getting up to about this height is where I'm hoping. And then I can use my string line to just run those straight lines of brick out. I've got that corner up to a sufficient height where I can begin running out those straight courses. 3 courses, and then I can put some more of those brick ties in, and I'll show you what they look like up close when I put those in. Now on the other end of this string line I can use this brick pin. Wrap the string line around it, and this flat edge like a chisel I can push into the soft mortar around the corner, and that'll hold the string line in position. Right, I'm back the next morning to set up the string line again. Now this mortar, of course, was put in yesterday, so it has already started to go off. It's not full strength yet, by no means, but it's definitely firm. Now what I don't want to do is hammer this in between 2 bricks on a horizontal join, because that could basically split that brick or split the join so that the brick actually comes off. What I'm going to do is pull the string nice and tight, get it round into a perp or a vertical joint, and that way it's less likely to unsettle the bricks. Now you can see that string line is nice and tight. It needs to be on the top arris or edge of this brick here. The problem, of course, because I'm raking my joints out, because I like the look of it, when I put the string line to the top of the brick, well, it's just springing into the mortar line. That means it's holding the string line about 3 to 4 millimeters back from the arris of this brick. So found a nice fresh leaf here. Just going to wrap the string line up like so. Trap that down with a brick. Spend a few moments just getting that just right. There we go. And now we're right on the top of that arris. Doesn't matter what it's doing here, it matters what it's doing there. And there we go. All right, string line in place. Let's get this course in. Now, to tie the brick veneer into this concrete retaining wall, I'm going to be using some of these brick ties. These are a pressed metal plate and they're going to be installed just like this, bedded into the mortar, and that'll help tie the two together. Now they're bent to an angle which is greater than 90 degrees, and that's because if you're using these in a residential property, you want the moisture, potential condensation within the cavity to run forward to the brick and down through the weep holes. I don't care about that, it doesn't matter for my retaining wall. So I'm going to get these installed with some of these concrete screws. Now the spacings need to be a maximum of 400 millimeters horizontally and a maximum of 400 millimeters vertically as well. I'm going every 4 courses, and that way I'm well within spec. Now these do come in different lengths. I've purposely bought long ones because, as you know, around the corner there's a 40 millimeter cavity between the two faces, and these are going to give me the reach I need. But here they're a little bit too long, to be honest. They're only about 5 millimeters back from the front surface of the brick, and that's going to show when I rake out the mortar joint. So I'm just going to shorten these. It's only for this wall that I need to shorten them, and it doesn't take too long. Now a pair of tin snips would be ideal. I've got these really small bolt cutters which don't cut the plate, but they do score it enough to be able to snap it off like so. Alright, pop the concrete screw in the bracket and drive that home. Now here's a bad situation. I'm trying to get this brickwork to go over this pipe, and I'm trying to maintain my bonding. My perps are where I want them to be. However, you can see this brick here, which is acting as a lintel, is only just bearing on that brick there. Certainly not good enough. And that brick itself is overhanging the course below. So that isn't going to be strong enough. So what I'm going to do instead is replace these two bricks with this one here, which is cut on a 45-degree angle. This one here is also cut on a 45-degree angle, and they're going to be joined with this one here. Now this is called a Welsh arch, and it's going to form a really strong lintel over the pipe without actually bearing on it. We need to make sure that the pipe and the wall, well, there's a gap around the perimeter of that pipe. This does the job beautifully. So let's get those mortared in. Now this is going to be very much a repeat of what I've been doing already until I get up to about this height. And although I could watch bricks being laid all day, I'm sure that some of you, well, couldn't. So while I get on with this, why don't I take you back a couple of months when I made a spur of the moment purchase? And I'd like your help making a decision with what to do with it. So I'm going to head down the driveway now to the container and try and sort things out. And that's because I've got another arrival on its way. In a few days, I'm going to go and pick up another project and I need somewhere to put it. And with all that timber out of the way, it's time to tackle this Lister engine. Now I'm no expert on this, but I think it's from around about the 1950s. On a trolley at the moment with a flat tyre, I'm just going to drag it up out of the way, and it will be used somewhere on a project in the future. And in that timber pile I managed to find a bunch of old macrocarpa sleepers. Now these are in reasonably shoddy condition, but I think they'll do a great job of just tidying and neatening up around the base of the container. Now, I know this is a bit of a sidetrack, but hey, why finish a job when you can start another? This won't take too long, and I think it'll be a fast improvement. And there we are, much better. Now I actually bought that Lister engine to go onto this Lister chassis that I've got. This is a 1900, and, I don't know, 5 or 10 chassis, cast iron, weighs an absolute ton. And, well, it's in the way, so we've got to get that dragged up the driveway as well and deposited into the garden. Right, so I just picked up the car transporter trailer from the hire shop. Now I'm going to head down into, well, almost into Wellington City to pick up this 1954 Volkswagen Beetle. Well, this Beetle really is rusty. I mean, take a look inside at the state of the floors. It's a Flintstone car, which might serve me well because I've got to get it from the top of the drive all the way down to the bottom to the shipping container. Now, it's about 110 meters in length, but more importantly, it's very steep in places. And this car hasn't got any brakes. So I've been having a look at it and I think the handbrake works. I'm just going to take the chocks from under the wheel and give it a roll and see if the handbrake actually does its job. Now, if that works, my plan is to roll it down the driveway, standing inside it, because there's no driver's seat, and attempting to slow it down with the handbrake. Now, what could possibly go wrong? Well, let's find out, shall we? We've got the original 54 Batwing steering wheel, needs restoration, but then so does the rest of the vehicle. Lovely dashboard, nice patina again. And look at that, it's only done 83,000 miles. A bit of Frankenstein's repair there on the visor. What a view. Now, what could possibly go wrong? Well, I guess the handbrake cable could snap. And if that happened, there's nothing I can do to stop me and the vehicle ending up at the bottom of the drive or in a tree. I'm not sure that's a risk I'm willing to take. Not with the V-dub anyway. So I think what I'm going to do is get the ATV out, attach it to the front, and lower it down the driveway, rather like I did with the Lister chassis yesterday. So I mentioned earlier on in the video, I'd like your help in the comments to tell me what you think I should do with this rusty old Beetle. Now, it could be restored. It's not that far gone that it's impossible to restore it. I'm not sure it's a project that I want to take on. I've got enough going on around this place. Another option, or perhaps better option, is to have it as some kind of garden art. Find some of the missing parts, you can see the bumper, the taillights, etc. find some of those missing parts and deposit it perhaps in the growth opposite the tiny barn. That's another option. Now when I get onto the build of the big workshop, and I'm hoping that that's going to be next year sometime, it's potentially going to have a mezzanine floor. And that mezzanine floor is going to need a railing. So another idea, and I'm quite liking this at the moment, is to dismantle the beetle and use the body parts welded together with tube to create a railing or fencing. Rather like the plastic model kits that you got as a kid. I don't know. Have you got any ideas? Let me know in the comments below what you think I should do. Now I really like how the curved corner has turned out, but I don't want to continue that right to the very top of the wall. This is a nod to days gone by. Before we had cars, of course, we all had horses, and the curved corners on walls and buildings was so that the horse's rope wouldn't snag as you go around the corner. Now those curves wouldn't have continued up the entire length of the wall or building. They would have gone a little over head height and then become a square corner. And I want to do the same here. So I've fashioned up a brick that's going to transition from the curve to the square. You can see it starts off with the radius down at the bottom here, and then it scallops and radiuses out to a sharp 90-degree corner, and it's going to look just like that. Now it still needs finessing. All of these need light sanding to bring them in line with each other and to get rid of the grinder marks, and I'll do the same to this. But in principle, I think that is going to look good with a couple of courses of square corner on top and then a header row. Okay, string line is in line with the very top arris of this brick. I've already got it set over at the other end. We're ready to run that course in. Might just tension that just a little bit more. That's good. So the great thing about building to a line is that it tells you exactly where the level is, and it makes sure that the wall is nice and straight. And if your mix is nice and creamy, all I've got to do is give it a little press looking at where it's needing a bit more pressure, and then scoop off the waste. Now, because all of my bricks are such different dimensions, there's really thick ones, really thin ones. My beds sometimes need bashing down a little bit, rather like this one. But I've still got a centimetre or thereabouts here, 3/8 of an inch, and that is a perfect joint. Now my arris is lined up with my string line. Looking from above, it just needs to come forward. Actually, that needs to go back. That's better. Just making sure it's off the string line. And then when you cut your mortar, if you find it catches on the bottom of the brick, it means it's tipped in this direction. Or if it smears the face, it's tipped in that direction. So you don't need to check it with a level. This, however, is a little off, but these bricks aren't square. If I check the face, which is more important, that's perfect. Now maybe you'll notice here that my perps are getting really close to each other. This perp should be the centre of this brick, which is about here. So it's about 15 to 20 millimetres, 3/4 of an inch, 5/8 out of position. And that's because all of these bricks are different lengths. Some are actually super long. So I'm trying to just creep my joints a little closer so I don't get too close to those perps. I don't mind it staggered like that. It adds to the charm, but I don't want them to be nearly aligned with each other. Well, now the front of the wall and the corner is up to finished height. It just needs the header course or capping putting on. I've got to finish this side wall, and you can see that the retaining wall that it's skinning over is on a slope or an angle. So I spent a few moments establishing this string line. It comes from 0 here all the way up to this height. I've got a little bit more work to do running in some courses of full brick, and then I'm going to have to start to do some cuts. I'm going to corner up here, getting up to the finished height, and then I can fill in as many full bricks as I can before I have to establish where those cuts need to be made. If you take a look at the top of the wall here, you can see I've taken some time to establish where the underside of the header course has to be. There's a full course of brick got to be put on the top of this retaining wall. I've put my string line attached to a brick in a bunch of spacers, making sure that it's level, and I've made sure that it's plumb from the wall. And that is where the corner of the wall needs to be. And with all the full bricks in place, I'm ready to start making my marks for my cuts. I'm using a piece of wood as a spacer to replicate the mortar join, and then using a bolster chisel to make the cuts. Now, this would be perfect for the wet saw that I mentioned earlier, so Yvonne, if you're shouting at your screen right now, I do apologise, but remember, this wall is a simple wall, and it's built with simple tools. The bolster chisel does a great job, as you can see here. I'm just getting ready to put the final mix on to get this header course in place so this wall is finished. And I'm using a brick on edge, as you can see here, and I've mopped them up to look at the corner detail. And it doesn't look terrible, but I'm not loving it. So I'm going to make a couple of changes. The main thing I don't like is that this perp is in line with this one, and it just doesn't look good at all. So what I'm going to do instead is mitre across these 3 bricks and these 3, so I get a nice tight join and it'll look neat and slightly decorative. However, what I don't want to do is mitre this corner brick here, because I'll end up with a perp right down on the sharp edge, and I don't think that looks very good. So I'm going to have a square here and then mitre these 2 back. And to do that, I've got my combination square here. So I've lined the bricks up, got my perp set, position the square on the corner. And remember, I don't want to mitre the corner brick, but I do want to run through on that one. And I'll just take that one out. I can extend it through those 2, just like so. Right, again, simple wall, simple tools. I'm going to cut these with the bolster chisel. Right, I've just cut my last one. You can see it's a nice, crisp, clean cut on the top edge, which is what's important. The rest, well, doesn't matter. You won't see it. And that gets me like so. Then I can just finish off the joint with a pointing bar, raking out the mortar to about 3mm below the face of the brick, giving it this nice aesthetic of old weathered brickwork.
Get down, 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 get down, down,
What do we got? 451, 452. And 451 and a half. I think that's good. Now, at this point, I want to take that measurement and see how many bricks it's going to give me. I need to decide whether these mortar beds, these perpendicular joints, need to be tighter or slightly opened so I can get a full brick right to the end there. So my measurement was 450, thereabouts, and that's going to give me 5 bricks. And a 10mm perp, so it's absolutely perfect. And the last header brick going in so that this wall is finished. Well, almost finished. I've just got a little bit of work to do around the column which supports the corner post of the tiny barn structure. There we go. Well, not my most elegant work, but this will all be underground from there below. So you won't see any of this. I will pack that in with mortar, and I will be coming back when I do a concrete mix, and I'll be underpinning this brick. So it's not overhanging the wall here. The brick that goes on top of here will be supported by this, but there will be this little cantilever. So I am going to put a footing under there, just not today. Well, that's all the painting complete, and this wall is finished. And I think you'll agree, it looks a whole lot better than that concrete retaining wall with that very unsightly bow in the centre. Now, there's still a few more things to do to actually finish this wall off. I've got this post to finish building the brick capping around. I'm not going to do any more of that until the wooden post is bolted in place, because I don't want to run the risk of the very heavy timber knocking the brickwork around. So I'm going to leave that as it is for now. And down this face here, I've got some pretty nice looking concrete planters to install with some cast iron brackets, but I'm going to give that some time for the mortar to really firm up before I go hanging extra weight off the front of these bricks. Now, I think this project has proven that with a few basic tools and a whole lot of patience, somebody who isn't a bricklayer can produce something that's actually quite special. Well, that's it for today. So until next time, thanks so much for watching. Bye.